All right. Good evening. Pardon for being, well, I'm not late. I thought I was going to be late. I was having some technical issues. So, but that's taken care of. But I still got a couple of things to set up. So,
Welcome to the Dominance Academy, where we specialize in revitalizing manhood and leadership. Our approach focuses on developing men to lead with strength and passion, enriching their lives and their families. We provide practical solutions and expert guidance in the realms of sexual education and the mysteries behind polarity and structured power dynamics. Join us at thedominanceacademy.com and restore harmony to your home while rediscovering the joy of a fulfilling masculine presence. It's time to step into your role as a leader and as a man. And now, the host of the show, Mr. Justin.
all right. All right. Good evening. Yes, had to take care of a couple of things real quick, but we're here. We're here and we're going to be going over some intermediate stuff. So it's kind of like a of the part two of the dominance basics video. So if you haven't watched that, go through the lives and go find the dominance and submission basics video, and it'll give you like a primer for how some of these things work. If you want to incorporate this into your relationship or anything like that, frankly, it's been now that I've brought this into my life as like a baseline of interacting with women, it really it it really is has been a profound change. Like I couldn't see myself doing anything else but this. So, but that's just me. I find it to be very enlightening when it comes to self discovery as well as the women involved. It transforms them. It brings them to a greater sense and greater understanding of themselves. And I just found that trying to get there through, I guess, like conventional means just wasn't as effective. It really wasn't. And, I've been the same way, always. I'm always looking for pathways to improve one's experience of the self. It's just been, my way since I don't know how long. And I just found that power dynamics and BDSM has been a fantastic method for doing this. Now, of course, there's a lot of different ways that one can do this. That's just one that I found that works well for me. So, um, let's see. Geez, lots of honking out there. So, you guys have heard me talk about my favorite toy. I've got it here, and I have an update to it. So, my favorite toy is it's called well, it's sometimes a switch, but it's really a crop. It's a riding crop. So this is the end of it, okay, and it's long, and then it has a handle back here, and it has like a bit of flex to it, right? And then this end is leather, all right, and because it has like this wide end, it has sort of like a slapping sort of feel to it. It's got like a wide sting. And if you know physics, if you have like the same amount of force applied on a smaller surface, it's sharper. The feeling is sharper. The wider the surface, the energy gets dispersed. So you get a thuddier sort of feel the wider the striking end is. And I really like this one because it's fast, it's effective, it's really easy to control the amount of power that you use. And just know that whenever you're using a toy for striking, or they call it impacts play, um, you don't need as much force as you think you do, and you can produce a very high level amount of pain with just the smallest of movements. So don't think that you need like even full swing, just a wrist like whack. But so I was looking around for something, I don't know, maybe a little bit more elegant. And I really like leather. I like the smell and the feel and texture of leather. I'm not one of those leather guys where I like wear like the mask or anything like that. I mean, I've got a number of leather jackets. I've got a leather racing suit, gloves, and things like that. So I do like it, just generally speaking. But I wanted a toy that was leather. So I got another sort of riding crop, and again, like that first one I showed you is made for horses. Um, but it's used in BDSM circles as well. And so I got this guy here. And so this is the striking end. It's got a loop as well, much smaller. And then the entire length of it is leather. Okay, it's a woven leather or braided. It's a circular braided leather. And this is really cool. It's very flexible, very lightweight, and so you see I can turn it all the way around. Um, I'm hydrating it right now. I've put only one layer of mink oil on it. So if you have any leather stuff, you should have a bottle of mink oil cream, right? Not the oil itself, like that's like thin and oil colored. Make sure you get an oil cream. It goes on much better, and you just rub it into the leather like you're applying lotion. And this still needs more. Probably needs a few treatments. It's not totally dried out, but you can tell this has like been in storage for a while. But this guy here, this guy here is really gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna sting. I've tried it out on myself, and it does not require a lot of force at all. But it makes a nice whipping noise. Can be very intimidating. Um, and intimidation is, kind of goes into what we're about to go into, because the more you go into the realms of BDSM, and the deeper, the more sophisticated you go, it gets more psychological than it does physical. You can incorporate these things, the physical stuff, the bondage and all that stuff, but all of that really goes into the mind. So so you're using this vehicle, say like leather cuffs or something like that, or rope, excuse me. And this can what this does is it creates a channel for a psychological and emotional stimuli, right? And it produces a certain feeling and a certain state. So, but it's like very, I don't know, it's callous, right? It's like using a hammer, right? And the more you get into this, you realize that there's more and more elegant ways to go about achieving the same thing, achieving the state of submission without using any tools except your mind and your voice and your presence. And so that's kind of what we're getting into. But so I mentioned like just briefly about intimidation and psychological things. So there's a girl who's going to be experiencing this new toy, after it's been conditioned better. And so a great way would be, say she's on the bed or something like that, and you give a very quick whipping, on like a couch or bed or the floor or something like that, really loud, like right next to their head. And that will produce a certain thought like, oh shit, this is going to happen to me next. Okay. And then you don't deliver it. Either you don't use it at all, or when it comes time to use it, you just give a light tap. So they've got all this anticipation and fear, like the anxiety is rising for that moment. And then you totally go in a different direction. Okay. So that kind of goes into the realm of mind fucking. And I believe there's a live video about mind fucking if you want to learn more about that. So let's, yes, my cat is visiting the recording. So here's 10 more advanced concepts for deeper power exchange. So the first one is energetic authority and verbal control. So while I was saying that like dominance can be achieved through physicality, right? Just grabbing her, pulling on her hair, putting your hand around her neck, grabbing her wrist, spanking, and verbal commands as well. Like these things are all very powerful, but it's very much like on the nose. right? It's like exactly what you'd expect. And it's not that hard to implement if you've let go of your fear around displeasing a woman. Okay. Because you can't, I've said this many times before, you can't be dominant and insecure at the same time. You have to have full relaxed confidence within yourself, right? Which produces what I call stillness, right? The mountain mind. You can't be dominant without those things. No, bud, you're with me. Yeah, you're with me. So, because if he goes out of here, the dogs will fucking go crazy. But anyways, so true dominance is often nonverbal. So what really kind of sets the stage for this is presence, timing, and restraint. So presence, okay. Presence is how the woman feels around you, okay? And this is determined by subtle things. It's nonverbal cues. It's like, for example, I knew this one guy. All right, this was like post college, and I was living with this dude. He was a philosophy PhD, Western philosophy. We used to get into all kinds of fantastic discussions because I was heavily studied in Eastern philosophy. So we kind of like discussed concepts and met in the middle. But anyways, this guy was like very tweaky, and he would never look anyone in the eye when he spoke to them. He was always darting his gaze around the person's the person's eyes, around their face, around the room, and he was just darting all over the place. He would never just lock in on the person's eyes and talk to them directly. And and it was because he had, his own anxieties or insecurities or whatever. He was just a weird dude. Super fucking smart, but very, very weird. And so being able to calmly hold a gaze, to be able to calmly hold a gaze for as long as you want, that is part of presence. Be like being totally comfortable with tension. That's another thing. It's being totally confident and totally comfortable while sitting inside tension. And that is something that shows presence. It puts off like a feeling that the woman can pick up on. And and she's going to feel the tension, but you're sitting in it and you're completely calm. You're totally calm within all of this. And part of that is being able to hold eye contact and really feel comfortable about it. So in order to build this presence, you're going to have to be able to hold eye contact with other people during conversation, and and until you get to the point of being comfortable with it. Like if this is something that makes you uncomfortable, all right? So presence, it can come off with your comfort in any situation. You're just relaxed, nothing really bothers you. It's it's cool. Like I'm reminded of like those characters in anime. Also, if you saw Alice in Borderland, there was this one character. I think he was this guy. He had like white hair, I think, and he's always the dude who's slow. His hands are always in his pockets, and he's always bored and annoyed with every situation. He's like, whatever, Um, Another guy who kind of had that presence was in Naruto, the guy who could control shadows. I forget his name. And he kind of had that attitude. Like everything was boring to him, everything was a drag. You don't want to have like that full on animated attitude towards things, but in the sense that whatever's going on, you're just chill. Nothing is moving you off of your square. Whether it's a positive situation or a negative situation, you're not influenced in either direction. All right. I might have to put him away. He's making too much noise. So that's part of presence. Okay. Presence also comes in your movements. Okay. Are you herky jerky with your body movement? or is your body movement slow and deliberate? Right? Are you second guessing yourself? Like I remember when I was living in Italy, there was this girl, and her name was Dara, and she was kind of a big girl, like overall big. She was tall and she was heavy set, and of course, she was insecure about this, and so I'm sitting there like eating lunch, and her foot touched my foot under the table, and she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," and like her sorries, like that was like her having a negative presence, okay? Because she was so uncomfortable with herself that she was like kind of second guessing all of her movements because she was afraid of perceptions of others. And that just totally ruins the presence. And what's ruining my concentration is my cat yowling. So I'm going to just put him away just for a moment. Part All right. Fucking cat. But yeah, Shikamaru. That's who it was. Yes. This girl's so funny. Yes. Anyways. Oh man. It's just funny like when you get in when you get inside the heads of girls, and you can basically go in any direction you want because you just know their architecture, you know the lay of the land, and you can just go anywhere, and you know what they're going to say, you know their reactions. And so I don't know, it just kind of becomes a game of playing puppeteer at that point. It's interesting, kind of like Shikamaru when he takes control of the bodies. So right, so that's presence. Timing kind of goes into what I was talking about before with movement. Okay, dominance as it relates to timing is slow. All right. The, what was the post that I made? It was a funny little post. It was something like, I was talking to one of my subs like through one of my stories, and I said, I'm not gentle. I'm slow, and that's worse. And so it's kind of a funny thing to say because it's saying like also I'm rough, but being slow is so much worse. Being deliberately slow and taking your time, because what that says is I'm in complete control of myself. I'm not in a rush to do anything. I'm not full of impulse. I'm not full of drive. I'm not full of lust or hunger or desire. I'm in control of all of those things, and they're going to operate at the pace that I want them to. And that really sends a signal, this like sub communication signal to the woman that she really doesn't have influence over you, that nothing really has influence over you. You move at the timing that you want to move. And when you can slow things down with your own presence, it says to her that you can't be rushed. And then also when you're, say, like physically interacting with her, right, in a sexual manner, if you're able to continue with this slow timing where it creates a tremendous amount of back pressure. That's what it does. Okay. Now, there is something to say for just unbridled animalistic passion. Okay. But that should be used sparingly. Okay. What should be more common is smooth, controlled, deliberate timing where you don't you're not driven to fuck, right? You're not driven to like fill a hole, right? It's it's you want to have this very decisive means of going about everything in the bedroom. Nothing is just really I don't know, spontaneous. I mean, maybe a little bits here and there, but generally speaking, everything is operating off of this deliberate, slow, planned pace. And this really drives women crazy, especially if she's very horny. She wants to fuck. She really likes you. She wants to get into your whole frame. It's incredibly powerful if you're like, pump the brakes, darling. I want you to walk, not run. Actually, I don't want you to walk. I want you to crawl. And that's going to make me so fucking wet. And like wet mentally wet. Okay. It's tremendous power, which is timing. Okay. And that kind of goes into it dovetails into the last one, which is I said restraint. Okay. Restraint is is fantastic because it goes hand in hand with timing. Okay. You can't rush restraint. Okay. Restraint is by nature slower. Okay. So whether that's actual physical restraint with like ropes, Velcro, cuffs, tape, what have you, or the restraint of your own impulses, restraint on speaking too much, restraint on your physical movements. Right? I mentioned Bruce Lee and his whole idea of economy of motion and only doing what's necessary to get the job done. These things are incredibly powerful, and it speaks to your dominance on a level that is far more impactful than one of these and saying bend over. Okay. Now, this is fun and all. Okay. But it doesn't penetrate very deep. She can have her fun with this, feel like she's submissive for those moments, and then go about her life. And that is perfectly fine. There's tons of people who do this, tons, where in the bedroom, they allow themselves this freedom, but out of the bedroom, they're totally locked down, different person, what have you. Okay. And for those that want to operate that way, that's perfectly fine. You're not alone. That's very common, much more common than 24/7. But what kind of starts the 24/7 is you. So if you're someone who's interested in a 24/7 dynamic, it starts with your presence. It's which is it links to your mindset, how you feel about yourself, how you see yourself. Like there's all these like underlying precursors. Okay. And if there's a problem with that, that's where coaching comes into play. So, look in the description of this video and you can set up a call. Uncle Guns, I believe, put in links for the free call, but if not, it's in the description. But it starts with you. And so if you're always like this, then you're starting the beginning ticks of that 24-hour dynamic. And so whoever comes in, you're basically like saying without saying, this is how I am. This is how I operate. And if she likes you and wants to spend more time with you, she has no other choice but to get with the program, so to speak. All right. Now that isn't what a program is, but it's a turn of phrase, whatever they say. But just to get on board or not. And if she gets on board, this is how it's going to be based on your presence. Okay. So I hope that explains the first one, energetic authority and verbal control. So the next one is conditioned responses and ritual triggers. All right. So there's rituals, mantras, posture protocols, sensory cues that can create automatic submissive behaviors over time. And these are the small things that you do every single day. Like when you're communicating with a girl, let's say she's interested in power dynamics, but she doesn't really know much about it. She really likes you. She kind of wants to explore a little bit, but she has uncertainty or she has some misunderstandings of what it is because she's seen certain things in porn or she's read a couple of books and, frankly, there's not a lot of really good literature out there. And if you want a good book on domination, the best one out there, to my knowledge, is The Heart of Dominance by um, Anton Fullman. Anton Fullman. So that by far is the best book on domination that I've ever read. But it's these little things that become ritual that set things in mind. All right. So to give you an example, if if you were Catholic, you remember going to church, or you still do this, and before you sit down on the pews, you kneel and cross yourself, and then you sit. And you do this every single time. Like you come in, you take off your hat, you look for the seat you want, you kneel, cross yourself, and then sit. And if you look at religious traditions, like especially something that has a lot of pomp and process, like Catholicism, especially like Roman or Russian Catholicism, they've got a lot of stuff, a lot of religious ceremonial type things, and it's all symbolic. And what this does by doing this every single time, right? It starts setting your mind to be a certain way. And so that's why it's really important to have certain rituals. And they can be very small. They don't have to be some ceremonial thing, really small. Like you say, I'd like you to say good morning every day that you wake up. And that's just something you say. Not that you need to hear good morning, because who gives a fuck? You're a man. You don't need to hear this every morning. You're not 8 years old. All right. If you do, you've got some arrested development going on with your emotional situation. But the reason being is to set up a ritual. And so a small ritual of deference towards you, right? And this is kind of, it sets the precursors and the tone for submission, right? And there's a lot of these things. It could be titles, it could be names, all right? So I don't answer to a name. Like none of my girls say anything regarding my name. I've not heard my name from them in years. Like as far as like the BDSM context, I've not heard my own name in a long fucking time. And it's titles that either I've told them to use or titles that they have chosen to use that I approve of. But either way, that's what it is. And so it's like, sir, my lord, master, my king, my lion, my son. Um, what else has there been? I don't, I think that's it. Excuse me. So, uh, yeah, so titles is another one. Mantras. I mentioned mantras. These things are really powerful too. And so let's say, now understands a strong part of being a dominant is being a guide. That's a really important thing. So let's say you notice that she has a little bit of this constant, like she's constantly saying things that have to do with like self-effacement or expressing her insecurity. Like it just regularly pops up, and you're just like, oh, like this is just ridiculous. This needs to be nipped in the bud. All right. So you produce a mantra for her to say every day to counteract this mindset that she has around self-effacement and self-rejection. And this can be very powerful because it's a form of caretaking, but at the same time, it's not like you care about the caretaking. That's not really what the point is. The point is solidifying that track. It's digging the track deeper and carving that line in the ground even deeper. And that line is the beginnings of setting up submission. It's to create ritual, is to create a mindset. All right. Uh, Like the Buddhists, they have a chant, like they'll chant sutras, and they'll chant them over and over and over and over and over again, just trying to drill that shit into their brain. Okay. And so it's along the same idea. There's posture protocols, right? So let's say every, and it doesn't have to be strictly like BDSM, because there are, typical BDSM postures. All right. They all have names and all this stuff. And, they're cool and fun to play around with and all that good shit. But you don't have to follow that. But it could be like, let's say you video chat with a girl every week, right? Let's say it's like every Thursday night at 7 p.m. You sit down and you have like a 30-minute video chat. Okay. You could say, all right, when we meet on the video chat, like no more like lying in your bed, kicking your feet, like lying on your back with the phone up like this or whatever. I want you seated with the phone in front of you, sitting with your posture upright. And just for our video calls, all right? So every video call, this is how I would like you to be: sitting upright, looking straight into the camera, very relaxed, focused, and proper. And so that turning into a ritual, again, you're not trying to correct her posture or anything like that. It's setting up these continual things, these continual little rituals to carve that line deeper into the ground. Okay. Uh, One that was regular with me is that whenever I visit this one submissive, after washing my hands, I would then go to her, and before any hugging or kissing or any other type of recognition, I would offer my right palm and she would kiss my palm. Like she would kind of bend over at the waist and she would kiss my palm. All right. She wouldn't kneel, but she would bend over at the waist. She would hold my hand and kiss my palm. And we do this every single time we saw each other. Right. It like when it came to, I'm sorry, not every single time, when it came to meeting in a home. Okay. Whether it was something indoors, like a hotel or, my place, her place, whatever, it was it was always this ritual. All right. Now, if we met outside, we were going for a cocktail, it wasn't going to be that, because, and the reason being is that that was part of our dynamic, and the public is not consenting to our dynamic. So if that's something you concern yourself with, then you're not going to push that on other people without their knowledge, right? If you don't care, then fuck it. I mean, I've straight up seen people walking a girl in public with a collar around her neck and a chain, like a dog leash. Now, she wasn't crawling, she was just walking, but, in the same way, she's leading around like a dog. And they're just with the attitude like, fuck it, this is my one life to live. This is how I want to be in public. And that's fine too. But I'm more of the, conservative side that believes that, you did not get the consent from the public to express your dynamic particulars. So, posture protocols, sensory cues. Okay. So like, for example, uh, you could say wear the same kind of cologne, right? The same kind of cologne every single time this girl came over or you went to her place. Okay. And you told her that you want her to like smell your neck. And every single time you see each other, right? That's maybe part of the greeting ritual, right? To come in, smell your neck, maybe give you a kiss on the neck, and then you tell her, good girl. You give her some sort of recognition for the behaviors. So now what's happening is the praise is now, it sends like a wave into the mind, into the emotions of approval. And, maybe she likes the sound of your voice or something like that, but that's being connected to the smell. So now, once that's set up and it's this recurring thing, okay, this is Pavlovian stuff, that if she were to smell that cologne outside of that context, right? So say you meet up to, go for a walk in the park, or you meet up to go to a movie or something like that, and she smells the same cologne on you in a totally different context, it's going to spark the feeling that she gets from hearing the good girl. So this is, creating these associations. So again, it's not about the cologne or anything like that. It's about creating these ritual triggers that can create cues that lead to submission. All right. And that's all part of it, right? Because you're trying to ease the mind and ease the emotions into basically saying, hey, by doing this, you feel good. So the brain is going to be like, oh, I like feeling good. I'm going to keep doing that thing that makes me feel good. And we all do this, right? It's around us all the time, all the time. So let's continue on. The third one here is psychological edging and power tension. All right. So it's the deliberate withholding of validation, climax, or praise, and not as punishment, but as sort of like a psychological, emotional, and perhaps spiritual deepening of the dynamic. And and this is incredibly potent, and it goes all the way back to the first one with timing and restraint. And this is why I harp on you guys so much about having impulse control, getting pussy worship out of your head permanently, getting it to the point where a beautiful woman doesn't affect you at all. It doesn't drive you to do anything, nothing. And that's the kind of impulse that you want. Kind of like, you ever see those trained dogs and they've been trained so fucking well. You take this nice cut of like raw beef and it's so good. And you see I've seen videos of this where the dog's sitting there in the kitchen, they get this nice cube, nice cut, and they put it on the dog's head or like on the end of the dog's nose. And the dog just fucking sits there, just waits for the command, and then patiently, not even drooling, okay? Like sitting there like in a panic, like, oh my God, I can't wait for the word. I can't wait for the word. It's just chill. Like the meat isn't even there. And then the owner goes, okay, go. And he's like, flips it up, chomp, and it's gone. You want to have that kind of control when it comes to sexual impulse. It could be sitting on your face and you're just regular, as if it's not even there. Right? That's the kind of control that you need to be able to enact psychological edging and power tension, right? Being able to withhold things that you really would like to do. All right. And, but it's, you want to get it to the point where it's not still this thing that you really want to do, but you're withholding because that causes tension. It's really a letting go. All right. It's not keeping the grasp and then resisting it. It's letting go. And this makes everything easier. It makes domination so fucking easy. Absolutely. And so for this psychological edging and stuff, like withholding validation is it's a fantastic tool, right? Validation and praise, they kind of go hand in hand. And so a good method that you can practice or just keep in mind is intermittent reinforcement. Okay. So this is something that is used in casinos, right? So you're sitting at like the slot machines and you pull the handle and it's set up with intermittent reinforcement, right? Sometimes you get a win, sometimes you get a lose, sometimes you get something close. Um, and that's what keeps you in the chair, because you don't know what's going to happen, but you do know that you could possibly win because you won a couple times already. But it's only been like 2 out of every 10 pulls. And that's enough to keep you in the seat, keep spending the money, right? And so that's the whole idea around intermittent reinforcement. You give some of what they need, that praise for something where she does a certain thing and you give her recognition. She does something nice or whatever, either following a command or just of her own volition. You're like, hey, baby, come here. And you set her down and look her in the eye, tell her exactly what it is that's making you happy and how sexy she is for doing this sort of thing. And, she likes you. And so anything you tell her in this regard feels amazing, right? And then you're like, all right, go back about what you're doing, give her a little smack on the ass. And so now that she's got this thing, you do this a few times, right? And then one time, out of the blue, you do nothing. You give no recognition whatsoever. And this is going to cause tension. It's a pattern interrupt. And she's like, part of her brain, consciously and subconscious, is going to be like, wait, where are my drugs? I always got a little hit whenever I did this thing, and now I don't get my drugs. Where's my drugs? What's going on? Did I do something wrong? Let me think back. I know I did everything right, and it's just like I did before. And why didn't he say what he always says? Does he like me still? I don't know. He's still pleasant. He's still fucking me. He's still, doing this and doing that. I'm still here. He hasn't dismissed me or anything. I haven't even been punished. So I haven't done anything wrong. What's going on? And it just turns into this whole other thing. And then the next day, boom, you bring it back. And she's like, what the fuck is going on here? Right. And, either consciously or subconsciously, there's an interrupt for the interrupt. And that brings about your dominance. It says without saying, I'm in control here. You get what I give you. And I can pull it away at any time. And it doesn't even bother me. I barely even notice when I just pull the string away. And that's a very powerful, unspoken sort of thing, right? You don't announce this. You don't announce that you're going to do these things. You just do them. And that also says to her, I'm not afraid of your emotional response to this, right? Because she might be upset. She might get angry. She might get worried. She might get sad. She might, uh, she might recoil, like pull into herself, thinking that she did something wrong. So she kind of like shrinks away and, doesn't interact with you very much. And when you're unmoved by any of this, it really shows her that you are in complete control, that you are unaffected by her. And you have to be able to be still within tension if she has some sort of adverse reaction to you putting a pattern interrupt into her praise and validation. All right. By setting up something that has to do with uh, by setting up something that has to do with earning the validation and earning the praise. That's another thing. Okay. And you can either directly set this up, okay, where you say, like, listen, I want this done, I want this done, I want this done. And, when she does it, that's when you give the praise, or you don't put these things up on the front end and you just offer the praise and let her learn just, silently that these are the things that you like. Okay. So you can do either way. But the whole point is that she's learning that, like, when I do X, I get Y. Okay. And then the other part of, like, the withholding is the climax. All right. And this is a very, very powerful tool, extremely powerful, right? If you learn the art of edging and orgasm control, this can take incredible lengths and depths, like, that have a tremendous effect on her. Okay. And the base idea here is that things that are earned are treasured more than things that are given freely. And so this is something that you can either straight up just go for and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Hold on just 1 second. All right. Pardon the delay. So The orgasm control, pleasure control, is something that you can just start doing, or it's something you can discuss first and bring about, on your, you know, bring about like through discussion. And you say, hey, listen, have you ever done this? Have you ever done orgasm control? And you say, well, from now on, you're going to have to ask permission in order to come, whether it's on your own playing with yourself or it's with me and we're doing something. And I don't care if we're in the middle of fucking. I don't care if I've got a wand vibrator stuck on your pussy and you're reaching the point of no return. You must ask. And if I don't say yes, you don't get to come. Um, that can be implemented. Edging sort of stuff where you just tell her to masturbate or you masturbate her and you just bring her to the edge and then you stop and you do it again and again and again. And you can span this over days or weeks or whatever, right? Building that tension, basically telling her your pleasure is mine. Your pleasure is under my control. You get what I give you. And you can make the orgasms earned, or you can just, again, deliver them intermittently. And she'll be like, what am I getting this for? Why am I getting such pleasure? Like, what did I do? And then they'll cause her to reflect and see like what the hell is going on. You know what I mean? And so there's that. All right, the next one. Let's see here. Obedience under ambiguity. So training a submissive to act correctly, even when instructions aren't crystal clear. And this tests trust, initiative, and surrender, right? So training them to act correctly, even when instructions aren't clear. So this has to do with spot correction. Okay, correction on the spot. So let's say you didn't give her clear instructions on, say, how she's supposed to address you. All right. So, like, for me, just as an example, I always say you need to use my title either at the beginning or the end of every question or statement. So she'll say, like, it's asking me, like, how was your day? Right. It's got to be, sir, how was your day? Or how was your day, sir? And that has to be done every single time. Now, let's say I don't give that clear instruction up front, but this is something that I want. Right when it happens, she says, hey, how was your day? Boom, right then and there, the hatchet comes out and the compass. And I say, listen, this is how you're going to address me all the time from now on. And that's really what what needs to happen. Hold on just 1 second. All right. So the next one here, right. So obedience under ambiguity. So what this does, right, when you're correcting on the spot and you are, you're guiding in the moment. This is the thing that will test her trust, and it will, like, you're not asking permission. You're not giving her a pathway to prepare her mind and emotions for. It's in the moments that you're doing the sculpting. All right. And this will test her level of trust and her test of surrender. Really, really good thing to do. Very easy to do corrections on the spot. If, again, you can control your fears. If you have fears about, oh no, is she going to push against this? Or, oh no, she's not going to like hearing that. Or, oh my gosh, she's going to get upset. Like, you don't have what it takes, because you've got too much insecurity and too much fear and too much of a gynocentric thinking to be dominant. Right? You have those fears and concerns on the forefront, and that's going to affect everything you do and say and think. All right, the next one here, dominant stillness and the art of silence, right? So exploring when not to act, when not to speak, and not to respond. Silence can be a command, it can be a punishment, or it can be a test. So having stillness is a tremendous skill. All right. And it has so much power, the power of non-action. Okay. And this is it basically, it's like a silent guide. It's like having one of these in your hand, but it's not in your hand. And but it can sting just as much. So, just to like give you like an example, there's this girl that I'm training, and she had messed up. Like she had messed up pretty bad, as far as like communication protocols are gone. As far as communication protocols go, and she knew she had messed up. I brought it to her attention, and she did it again. So this was like a habitual thing, and it got under my skin. And I was like, you know what? You're going to be taking like oh, that's what it was. She wanted to she was very busy and was overloaded with like work and stuff like that. It had to do with like this, school year or whatever, college level stuff. And she's like was overwhelmed. She's like, I'm taking the weekends to be like away from my phone, and I'm not going to be communicating with anybody or anything like that. And I'm like, so you're just calling the shots, right? And we've gone over this. To do something like that, you have to ask permission. And so I figured that it was just the stress was so high that it overrode her, like the desire to release the stress and get away from it for a couple of days, overrode the protocols that I had set up. And that's fine. It happens, but it doesn't mean that there's no consequence for it. Okay. Like people speed because they're pissed off sometimes. It doesn't mean that you didn't break the law just because you had a bad day. You know what I'm saying? So it's in the same spirit as that. And so I brought it to her attention and like, no, you don't talk like this. This is not what you're going to do. This is not how you address me at all. You know, just grab the reins and start driving the boat. Well, boats don't have reins, but driving the horse. So I said, you know what? Take those 2 days and you're going to take an extra 2 days of silence. Do not contact me for an additional 48 hours. And that was like swinging a sledgehammer into her gut. I didn't have to do anything. It was just stillness. It was deliberate stillness and silence. It wasn't abandonment because she knew I wasn't going anywhere. It was just like, you are not to contact me for 48 hours. And it really threw her for a loop. It really caused um, like a significant mental pressure, right? Like I was taking a finger and just pressing it into her mind to make her realize the gravity of her choices. And so that's just an example of how stillness and silence can be extremely powerful. Now, if she's already, if she's not interested in you, if she doesn't look up to you, if she doesn't revere you, then it, you really don't have any of that power, right? Your silence will go unnoticed. So don't think that this is going to make you dominant, right? These are ways that you can express dominance in a situation where the girl already looks up to you. She already fears losing you. She already has great reverence for you. So don't think that like, oh, I'm going to teach her, like if the girl's not that into you, she's not going to give a fuck. She's not going to be affected at all. So stillness and the art of silence, really, really good. Or it can be a test. Like, let's say she's a chatty patty. She's just blowing up your phone constantly, all this stuff. There's a lot of girls who are like that. It's maybe they want the attention, maybe they're insecure, whatever it is. And you say, you know what? We're going to be performing a little test, and you're not going to send me a message, or you're not going to call me until you're told to by me. You're not going to do anything regarding talking to me until I give you the go ahead. And you say, and you put a time limit on it, because anything that you do is like a test or a punishment or a command or something along these lines. Put a time frame on it. So you say, like, for this week or for the next 3 days or what have you, this is what's happening. And then you give an explanation as to why you're doing it. So don't just do stuff, right? Because the whole point is to learn something, is to teach, to have her learn a lesson, to feel something that's impactful. So she might feel something, but she won't understand like what it's for. So always be sure to explain what the hell you're doing and why. All right, the next one here, hierarchical layering of protocols. So using levels of formality, right, either in private, semi-public, or ceremonial, to create texture and structure in long-term power exchange. Okay, so this is a little bit more advanced, where you've got some things established already. And so, for example, I gave you the greeting ritual of the palm kissing. To layer this, to make it even more impactful, it wouldn't be I want you to be just kissing my hand. It would be, I want you wearing a specific outfit, on your knees, waiting for me, with your eyes cast to the floor, your palms on your thighs, wearing your collar. You could even put more detail to the environments, the lighting, the sound, having a drink prepared for you, your slippers, or whatever. Okay, you add more and more detail to the thing, adding more layers to make it more ceremonial. So now when you come in, there's a whole thing that you've created, right? And again, if the girl's really into you, she's into exploring her submissive nature, then providing more details for a girl is going to be met with a lot of enthusiasm. She's going to really, really like it. It's going to be very strong in her. And that makes her feel more involved. It makes her feel like you're paying more attention to her. And this is incredibly powerful. This is it pulls her in more, right? Because it's like you're saying, like, you matter to me to a certain degree, that I'm putting all this detail around what I want you to do, right? Because if you didn't give a shit, you wouldn't have any kind of protocols. You wouldn't care at all. You just be like, yeah, like whatever, just fucking be there, you know. So having detail, having more control, having more ritual, having more ceremonial sort of stuff, that adds to it, right? Like another one that I had was, when we go out to dinner, she doesn't sit before I sit. She doesn't eat before I eat. She doesn't drink before I drink. And I've tested this just to make sure that it's, solidified. And say, go out to dinner and walk up to the table, and I just stand there and then wait for her eyes to catch mine. If they do, right? So if they do catch mine, now she's looking at me, waiting for the cue, right? She's like, making sure, like, is this what we're doing? Are you testing me for this thing? If she's really on point, she's not even going to look at you. She'll probably just, have her eyes cast, like, in a direction that's not like in your face, and just waiting for you to move. And then you sit, and then she'll sit, right? So, but that's something that I set up, right? Because I liked that. I liked the way that felt. I liked the way that it looked. I enjoyed the texture of that kind of setup. Okay. Same thing with the food. We could be just starving, and I'm just sitting there, not even holding my fork, and just talking and talking and just waiting to see, will the tension build, or she's just going to sit with my calm. So it's, again, like a lot, this goes back to the earlier stuff about controlling pace, controlling your own impulses, things of that nature. Okay. Timing, presence, restraint, all these things kind of like come together, and I'm hoping you're able to see that. It's an embodiment of a certain state, right? It's not about, it's not about the toys and, having all these like strict rules and stuff. There's strict rules and stuff can easily be grown off of this mindset. It can grow off of this state of being. Okay. So the next one here, the yield curve. All right, surrender over time. So how deeper layers of obedience emerge as trust, uh, where the ego erodes and vulnerability grows, which is mapped by an emotional investment curve. So basically, um, sorry. So so what does this mean? Okay. So as you build trust, as her ego, and actually yours as well, the ego erodes, then her vulnerability arises. Okay. And what's interesting is that for you, right, for the Dom, the ego erodes. This is what actually allows your natural leadership to come through. Because so many guys, they lead with their egos, they lead with their emotions, they lead with their psychological hangups, they lead with their insecurities. And if they present in a certain way, they feel like they're doing it right. They're doing it manly. They're doing it tough. They're doing it with a lot of control. But it's all fueled by this stuff that is unhealthy. It's a sloppy foundation. Okay. But the but once you start dealing with that stuff, which then decenters you to yourself, you don't have any of these injuries. You've corrected the dents in your spirit. You start eroding that part of your ego, and this is what allows for clean leadership to arise, not leadership as a means of control so you can feel safer. Right? There's a big difference between those. So that's your version of ego release. For the submissive, the ego release is actually a loss of identity. And because the identity is actually this, it's paper thin. It's just this thing that's constructed that interacts with society and other people and all this bullshit. But behind that, looking at the core of it, the core of submission, the core of vulnerability is to take shape. Okay. So the thing that takes the shape of something else doesn't necessarily have a shape of its own. So, like, look at water, for example. Water doesn't exactly have a shape, right? It like, you look at other things like this, it's like some beard condition. This bottle has a definitive shape, right? Even natural things like a rock has a definitive shape. It can't change its own shape. It's fixed until a force is applied upon it and then it changes its shape. But water, liquids, they don't really have a shape of their own. They take on the shape of other things. And this is actually the very like idealized core of the feminine submissive. This is ultimate vulnerability, where it doesn't have a need to try to hold a shape of its own, because it's become free enough through trust and through the over time, the erosion of ego, the erosion of identity, which allows her to flow into your container. And that container is built through the erosion of your own ego. So she can just pour in and becomes like a like an echo of your shape. It's a really awesome thing when this happens. And but again, you have to be first. You have to lead yourself out of your hangups, out of your insecurities, out of your pride, out of all your coping mechanisms, all the shit that makes you think you're better than you actually are, right? And really meeting yourself as you are without judgment or anything like that. Meeting your problems, meeting your injuries, meeting your wounds and your threads that are tied to bullshit that go way back in time, meeting them objectively and plainly without judgment, without trying to hide them, without trying to pretend that there's something else. All right. That's how you begin. Because if you haven't done this, and women can smell it on you when you haven't, they can smell insecurity, they can smell uncertainty, they can smell copes. That's what they're good at. They're really good at picking up on the unspokenness of a guy, right? Now, of course, like, it goes back to like the procreation strategies, right? Now, of course, like if a guy is some super ultra mega chad or whatever you guys fantasize about, um, that's just gonna, and she happens to be ovulating, then sure, she'll go for that, right? For that moment of needing that feeling and needing those genetics. But generally speaking, as like a relational sort of thing, people coming together and forming a bond, it's going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, if she can smell that stuff on you. And again, women are good at reading between the lines when it comes to that. The insecurity, the fear, the coping, the anger, or the rage, the grasping for control. This is all a put off, right? It says, I can't trust this guy. So if you haven't led yourself out of your own mire, how are you going to lead her? And leading her isn't about setting up rules and protocols. That's not actually leading. It's leading her through herself to release her from her own prison that's partially imposed by herself, partially imposed by her upbringing, her society, her culture, her conditioning, all that good stuff. So if you can't do that to you, how the hell are you going to do it to her? And that's how these deeper layers go, right? The deeper layers of obedience. This is when you start getting into, when you start working through that stuff with her and she starts shedding those layers, that's when reverence turns into worship, where she feels more herself when she is, either physically or metaphorically on her knees looking up at you. But the thing is that maybe at this point in time, you're thinking either that's bullshit, that can never happen, or, ooh, that would be really great. That's the way things should be, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but check this out. That's all ego. Once you start working on that stuff in yourself, when that happens with her, you're not going to care. But not in the sort of like, I don't care, like you're brushing dirt off your shoulders, nothing like that. It's just neutral, right? It's extremely neutral when I say not caring, right? Like I don't have a care for like, this screwdriver that's sitting here. It's the same sort of thing. It's like it's not weighted in any direction. It just is. So that's the kind of ironic thing, is that like when you bring her to the place of submission where she's really releasing all of the stuff that really identified her to herself and to society, you really aren't moved by that anymore. But that's the way things should be. That's where you're both actually operating from an unfettered natural state. And so, but it all starts with ego dissolving. All right, number 8 here: manipulated mirror states. So, how dominance can introduce mirrored behavior, right? Posture, tone, breath, to subtly train submissives through energetic synchronization. So this is basically what what is said, which is mirroring. All right. So this can be done with aided verbal or non-aided verbal. It depends on what kind of influence you have. So this has to do with behavior patterns. Okay, I mentioned posture, tone, breathing. Those are the like basic ones, but you might be thinking like, oh, like breathing, what the fuck? No, but it all matters. Okay, and it really comes down to, I think, your views on what you feel is like the best, right? Like the way things should be. Um, how you think that your behavior should be, how you think that a woman's behavior should be, like what in terms of like a submissive, like what how would they show up? And in order to get to this understanding, this vision, you can't do it with your brain completely saturated with lust, because right away it's very easy for guys to be like, oh yeah, she's going to be like this, and it's all about being slutty. It's all about her like being a whore and looking like a whore, behaving like a whore, but also, having like home duties. You know what I mean? Like cleaning up after you, serving you food, all that just like regular bullshit. But what's more important is the nuance, right? The small nuances of behavior, not these big things. And you need to create room of what a like nuanced submissive behaves like, the way you would vision, like just like a perfect rendition of what that behavior would look like in your life. The super slutty core stuff, kinky, whatever, that easily manifests after all this stuff is established. So easy. You can basically create any sort of sexual scenario you can possibly dream up. All right. Unless it's something that's far goes into her limitations, right? Or boundaries or whatever. Okay. But, generally speaking, you have a lot of creative freedom, but you have to give room, right? Which means, again, pushing that aside, pushing aside all that lust, right? Like, oh man, I want the girl who wears like the strappy leather thing with the metal and this stuff and the eyeliner and glossy lips and this, that, and the other, high heels, whatever. Like that doesn't really matter. Like that's not a sophisticated vision. So you got to think of how she's presenting, how she's talking, how her movements are, how her behavior is, and which is an indication of how she's thinking. So you got to think about how she's thinking, and this gets you into the mindset of like, okay, well, if this is what I want, how would I go about reverse engineering this so that it can become a reality? And this is where training, both subtle and coarse, comes into play. Course meaning you have direct commands. This is what I want you to do. This is how often you're going to practice it. It's going to last this long. And, there's a reward at the end. That's being like very overt about training something that you want. The other one is to use nonverbal, um, nonverbal acceptance of certain behaviors and either ignoring or making note or even punishing behaviors that you don't like. And this is another way that you can filter out the wheat from the chaff. Excuse me. All right. Number 9, controlled contradictions. Sometimes submission is tested through deliberate dissonance, conflicting orders, tasks under stress, or exposure under temptation. And so this is basically producing like mind fuck situations, right? So like a funny one is like, let's say you've got a girl who's, she's training or she's fully trained, and you give her a command to call you a bitch. And that's going to cause a big feedback problem, because either she calls you a bitch and follows orders, but then she's just called her lord or her sir or her master a bitch. Or if she doesn't want to do that, then she's going to be disobeying orders. So it's being put into those sort of situations, those catch 22 mind fuck situations. If again, I do believe I've got a video on mind fucking. I've written up some pretty extensive documentation about how to do mind fucking. It can get really complicated. Actually, not complicated, but fairly sophisticated. Let's just say that. And and it's about like just putting the mind and emotions in contradictory, conflicting situations where they're basically screwed no matter what they do. Um, you could also do tasks under stress. Okay. So let's say you're training her to learn mantras, right? Or learn affirmations. And they're really beautiful or whatever. It's to make her feel more submissive, feel more beautiful, feel more sexy, feel more connected to you, all that good stuff. Okay. But instead, you have her sitting like in a horse stance, right? If you've ever done like martial arts, it's basically like the way you would be sitting if you were riding a horse, and then make the horse vanish with your feet on the floor. And it's a pretty strenuous stance to hold for a long period of time. So you have her hold this position while reciting the affirmations. Now, depending on your level of sadism, right, you can push this, as far as you want. You can push this pretty far with the amount of stress that she has to do, the pressure, the amount of pressure, right? Um, there's so many ways, and the pressure can come in the form of physical, emotional, or psychological, while at the same time performing a task. And this is a thing that also pushes into the dominance. Right now, this is a little bit more deliberate because you're doing something, but it's not so direct. It's not so get on your knees, bend over, 10 spankings, like being bossy or commanding. It's pushing her mind into submission by way of putting her in conflicting places, right? Mentally conflicting or emotionally conflicting or even physically conflicting, right? So like for a girl that say she has long hair, okay, there's a type of plug called a hook, right? There's like an anal hook, and it's just this stainless steel J-shaped thing, and then on the end it's got like one metal ball or maybe three metal balls that are going smaller to the end. And say you have her on all fours, you insert this into her ass, and then the long end of the J, there's like a ring that's like welded onto the end. You then take a small piece of rope, tie one end to her hair like a ponytail, and then the other end you tie to this anal hook. So she's on all fours, and she has this, and you have it shortened in such a way that her head is pulled back, right? So what that's going to do is it's going to strain the neck muscles. Eventually, they're going to fatigue and maybe cramp, and she's going to want to pull her head forward to relieve the tension on her neck. Well, what that's going to do is going to pull that hook up her ass further, and that's going to cause her to wince. So that's going to make her pull her head back again, which will strain her neck, and then she's going to release it and then pull the hook more. So that's another example of being put into this catch-22 sort of scenario where there's these conflicting forces. All right. So when you can put her in positions of these conflicting forces, be it physical, emotional, or psychological, it shakes things up, right? This is another form of pattern interrupt, but in a different way. You're shaking up something a little bit thicker than just a pattern, right? It's more of like states that you're shaking up by doing this. All right, so that's number 9. And number 10 is post-obedience calibration. So this is what happens after the act of submission. And this is very important, right? So we were kind of looking at like more sadistic stuff. This is more like daddy. All right. This is wise daddy. And so what happens after the act of submission, whether it's something harsh and physical or whatever, or some sort of behavior thing or some sort of training that's completed or a test or what have you, it's with reflection, praise, discipline, reinforcement, correction, or deepening. Oh, hang on a second. I'm getting an important phone call. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So I was talking about post obedience calibration. So basically what happens, we were talking about like the ego stuff, and even if there isn't like full ego dissolving, right? There's the pathway there is you're already walking along that path if she's already experimenting and just taking like the gentle walk towards submission. You need to reinforce that what she's doing is okay, that it's safe, that you approve, that you support it, that you're really into it, it's sexy, you love it, all that good stuff. And this is done through reflection. You can just sit her down and do like a debriefing and ask her, say, hey, when we did this or when you experienced this, how did that make you feel? And give her the open permission to speak freely, that she can say whatever, however. Okay. This can be done in journal format, and you can just say, listen, I want you to write a page or a paragraph, whatever, reflecting on how you feel about XYZ, or how you feel about what we've been doing over the past 3 weeks, so that she starts reflecting on her own state. And this is again what brings her back inward. This is what you've been doing, right? Because this is part of what we do as development as men, as when you, especially when you come into this world, as like power dynamics, you are constantly checking your own state. until it becomes habitual. But at one point, it was something that you constantly had to do. And so now you're teaching her to do the same, right? For a different result. But she also has to become very much aware of her states instead of impulsively moving off of emotion. Okay. This is what they're used to. They're not used to reflection. And this is what you have to get her used to do, right? Um, Depending on the whatever the act of submission was, it might require praise, it might require some kind of aftercare, it might require some sort of review. Um, there might be some sort of validation involved, some reinforcement or some correction. Like maybe she did something that wasn't quite right. And now you're taking this time to correct certain things, but in a different context. Again, like I said, this is more daddy energy, right? So that she can feel that it's not like she's being scolded type corrected, but corrected with like a loving hand. All right. And this sort of thing deepens her experience. So it's not just this hard ass all the time. It's also you're this nurturer and grower of character. And this is what really it deepens her into what she's doing. Oh my gosh. Person just keeps blowing me up. Sorry. Okay. Unfortunately, I need to close the stream. Got a little bit of a family situation going on, but I did go through a list of 10. So I hope that you guys found that helpful, educational, and to widen your scope of what BDSM actually entails, because it's a lot deeper and a lot thicker than you might believe, and it can provide a pathway to tremendous transformation. So, if you have any questions about any more of this, anything you want to explore on your own, please get in touch with me. Find the link in the description of the video, or if you're here on the live, Uncle Guns put them in here, and schedule a free consultation, and we can have a chat. All right, until next time, thanks for watching.